very poor. It probably has from the humble to the haughty. But regardless of your station in life, whatever happens in the halls of government, it stands to affect you and how you get by from day to day. Whatever happens in the halls of government, its impact will be felt on you. And I want to begin my short presentation tonight by addressing some of the needs of those individuals who live in the Haynesville area, who I know struggle on a day-to-day basis to make ends meet. And I want to remind you, my friends, that 5 years and 3 weeks ago, the Democratic Labour Party came to you and they said to you, we are going to give you a better way of living, a better standard of life where cost of living would be brought down. You remember it? Cost of living was job number 1, it was job number 2, and job number 3. But all that we have been left with is the number 2 part. You know, you cannot make those kinds of promises to individuals who are eking out an existence, and yet still within weeks after winning the election, you act in such a vicious and rapacious way so as to cause the cost of their daily bread to increase. You know, as a member of parliament in rural Barbados, we don't have any wealthy people in St. Joseph. All of my constituents are humble people. They are people who work hard, but a small raise in price can make the difference between whether they sink or whether they swim in that week. And that's important to understand, because we are not talking about any slight cost of living increase that has burdened the people of Barbados over the last 5 years. Important staples in terms of commodities that Barbadians use have increased by as much as 30%. How can you expect individuals who are struggling to get by on a day-to-day basis to deal with those cost of living increases? And all of this has been visited on them in the last 5 years. You know, when we were in government, if there's one thing that everywhere you go, people say about the Barbados Labour Party, they say, and I believe them, that when the bees are in power, you always have $1 in your pocket. And you know, sometimes we really don't think about what that means. We just hear it and we say it. We don't give it a lot of thought. But I know that 5 years ago, some of you might have been looking for a carpenter and couldn't find one, because there was so much going on in Barbados that those guys were busy. You couldn't find a plumber to fix your pipe. You probably couldn't find an electrician. And it isn't that we didn't have them, we had them. But they were all busy, engaged on construction projects all across this nation. But the construction sector is now virtually dried up, and those people have had to be sent home. Do you understand what it means when 10,000 people have lost jobs in the last 5 years? Do you have any concept of how many people 10,000 people are? And if each of those 10,000 persons were the breadwinner, if each of them was the breadwinner in their family, and a family of 4, do you understand that that state of joblessness now immediately affects 40,000 Barbadians? 40,000 Barbadians. And then on top of that, you give the school children what they call free bus fares, while you increase the bus fares on the parents. What does that family of 4 do when one of them has lost a living? And then the cost of living, the electricity has gone up now. Sometimes, you know, you remember Esteban Suku once said that you can save electricity if you pull out your fridge? She said that. It was well reported. She said if you want to save electricity, pull out your fridge. One of my constituents said to me, Mr. Marshall, I'm not pulling out the fridge to save electricity. I'm pulling out the fridge because there ain't nothing in it. No reason to keep it plugged in. Along the way, I will save electricity, but the fridge is empty. So when we talk about cost of living, we are trying to address your minds to the fact that in Barbados today, we now have something called the growing poor. The percentage of people in Barbados below the poverty line is now higher than it has ever been. Well, it's not higher than it has ever been, because somebody would say, well, if it got to the 1930s and so on. But let's put it this way. It is now higher than it has been in the last 25 years. You couldn't argue about that. The level of poverty in Barbados is higher than at any time in the last 25 years. What does that tell you about where Barbados is going? There's a reason you measure things like the poverty level, you know. You measure those things like the poverty level so that you can set a baseline for something to get out of. How do you justify your stewardship of a country when instead of becoming more prosperous, we are becoming poorer? Is there any of you who would have elected the Democratic Labour Party on January 15th, 2008, who in your wildest imaginings could have imagined that 5 years later you would have been poorer? Does anybody elect a government to get poorer? Does anybody elect a government to become hungrier? Does anyone elect a government to become worse off? But that is exactly what the people of Barbados have done. We are now poorer than at any time in 25 years. Our society is coming apart at the seams. Our Barbadian brothers and sisters are out of work. And we have gone from being the most successful and most prosperous country in the Caribbean to now being the laughing stock. The one thing that you need to remember throughout the course of the next 2 weeks, the Democratic Labour Party will come to you and they will say, the reason we can't do any better is because of the international recession. And you know, that sounds like a good argument. The international recession. A government that is failing looks for everybody to blame except themselves. They're not going to blame the heavy taxation that they have put on us. They're not going to blame the VAT that they increased from 15% to 17.5%. They're not going to blame any of the things they did. They want to blame the international recession for where we are. When they come to you, say to them, explain to me, please, if it is an international recession, should it not affect all of the countries in the Caribbean in exactly the same way? We all rely on the same tourism. We all rely on the same tourism markets. We all rely on the same international business. And therefore, if there's an international recession, it should affect us all in the same way. There's that Bob Marley song that says, when the rain fall, it don't fall on one man house top. Well, all that means is that when there's a problem of an international nature, it affects everybody equally. How is it then that of the 16 countries in CARICOM, 14 countries are growing and 2 are not growing? And Barbados is one of the 2 that happens not to be growing. It shames me. It shames me to know that there was a time not long ago when you could not carry the Barbados dollar any place in the Caribbean and hope to spend it. You remember those days in the early 1990s? You couldn't go to Trinidad with a Barbados dollar to spend it. They wouldn't take it. Okay? That was not so long ago. And we all thought that those days were behind us. Little did we know that by the collective strokes of a number of pens across constituencies in Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party would be out of power and the decline would immediately set in. Our campaign slogan in the 1999 election, I believe it was, that Barbados should not go for silver, for bronze. We should not go for silver. We should go for the gold. And that characterized everything that happened in Barbados while Owen Arthur and his team, of which I am proud to be a part, were at the helm of this country. And if you just look around you now, look around you. We built a prison. We built schools. We built police stations. We built a new Coast Guard headquarters, a new judicial complex, and you could as well say we rebuilt the airport. Now, what does the Democratic Labour Party have to show after 5 years in government? Think about it. 4 roundabouts. Think about it. The only projects that the Democratic Labour Party can come to the people of this country at the end of 5 years and 3 weeks in government as their achievements are 4 roundabouts. And one of those roundabouts isn't even a new roundabout. They took the roundabout at Warrens and made it bigger. So it is really only 3 roundabouts. Do you understand how intellectually pauperized we must become in order to accept that development in our country is to be characterized by the construction of roundabouts? We have gone from being a proud nation, a nation that people the world over want to be in, a nation that stands as a beacon for development across the developing world. And we are now a nation that at the end of 5 years and 3 weeks of government, all that we have to show for it is 4 roundabouts. How sad that is. Barbados is rapidly being reduced to the status of a third world country if that is all that we can lay claim to. But you know, they have started out by making some wild promises. They have said, new hospital is coming, 2,000 more houses going up at Bushy Park, and the 1,000 that at Coverley still have not yet been sold. If you look carefully at the posters, you would even see a background of a police station. The police, they ain't break ground yet, but yet still they're claiming it as their own. I'm going to wrap up by reminding you of a few simple things. Number one, when you vote, you are voting for not the present, not today. You are voting for the future. And the future extends a really long time, you know. You have to ask yourself, by my conduct today, am I going to be doing something that will uplift the lives of a generation to come? You know, in the past, when Barbadian politicians made decisions, including members of the Owen Arthur cabinet, we never operated on the basis of what was good for today. Every single thing that we did, we considered what would the long-term impact be. And not just 1 year or 2 years, but we were looking generations down the line. When Owen Arthur determined that our strategy required that we would have a university graduate in every household by the year 2020, that was not for today. That was for 4 generations down the line. I happen to be the first person in the Marshall clan in St. George to have ever gone to university. The first person. But happily, I have not been the last. Because the decisions that were taken to enable me to enjoy university education, they were not designed for the short term. They were designed for the long term. That's how the Barbados Labour Party operates. So when you vote on election day, ask yourself, which administration is going to be the administration that takes care of the needs of 2 and 3 generations down the line? Let me answer that for you. It is the Barbados Labour Party. When you go to vote on election day, ask yourself, Which administration is going to be the administration that will put $1 in my pocket, put a little pep in my step, and allow me to hold up my head high as an independent man or a woman? Let me answer it for you. It is not the Democratic Labour Party, because that is not what they've done. They've pauperized you. The answer to the question is the Barbados Labour Party. When you go to the polls on election day, ask yourself, which representative is going to be the one who respects all people which representative will be the individual who respects the individuals with whom she comes into contact? It's going to be Sandra Husbands. It's not going to be the other person. I'm not going to call, I am wearing blinkers, because I am seeing Sandra Husbands in the future of St. James Central for a long, long time. This constituency has benefited from proper representation. So when you go to the polls, ask yourself, do the comparison. Who did we have before Sandra? You had a wonderful woman named Liz Thompson. And for whatever reason, the people of this constituency felt that they wouldn't put her back in. But I worked it out that maybe it was not such a bad thing that the Barbados Labour Party lost the election last time, because we have had the opportunity to wheel and come again. We've had the opportunity to revisit the things we needed to revisit. We have looked at we've made the changes that we needed to make, and the Barbados Labour Party that you see today is a stronger and more united party, and a party that is better able to cater to the needs of the people, not just in this constituency, but all across Barbados. Throughout the next few weeks, you're going to hear all kinds of scandal mongering. You're going to hear people dragging our names through the gutter. They're going to say the worst things about us, and they have already started. They've already started. But I promise you that the Barbados Labour Party, we will not be descending into the gutter. We're going to fight fire with fire. But you will not find any of our candidates reducing this campaign beyond anything other than the issues that affect people's lives. A politician should not come to you and his first words be, "I want your vote." Any politician who comes to you and the first words are, "I want your vote," is a politician who does not understand what is expected of him or her. And I know the kind of campaign that Sandra has been running. Sandra meets people and tries to discover their need, tries to find out who they are inside, what makes them tick, and most of all, how can she help that person's life to be a little better, a little easier. And when she has worked out all of that, then she gets around to maybe saying, "I want your vote." But we know that there are politicians who will approach you, and the first thing they will want to say to you is, "I want your vote." That is not the gentleman for you. That is not the lady for you. The individual who you need to elect is a Barbados Labour Party candidate, because the Barbados Labour Party candidates are not in the business of saying, "I want your vote." We're in the business of saying, "How can I help to ease your burden?" Because Barbadians today are more burdened than at any time in our history. And the time has come for it to stop. My friends, the next 2 weeks are going to go by very quickly. A lot of information is going to come at you. Some people can quote statistics. Some people will quote all kinds of things. But the decision that you have to make is not a decision that you should allow people to manipulate. It's a decision that will affect not just what happens in the next year, but what happens in the next 10 years. I guarantee you that when you vote for Sandra and Kerry and Edmund in the parish of St. James, in the constituencies of St. James, North, Central, and South, that you will be electing representatives who will be safeguarding your interests for generations to come. They are among the finest set of individuals that have been thrown up by any political party. They are decent, honest, upright human beings, and every single one of them deserves your vote on election day. And that is all I ask you for. But not on the basis that we have a fancy campaign, because we don't. The only thing about our campaign that you need to take away is the message. And that message is simple: that we will bring for you a better tomorrow. Good night, God bless, and get home safely.
Vote them up, hear the people ball. Vote them up, hear the people cry. Vote them up, not them again. Vote them up. Things hard, and we pray, and ain't go.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. The intent is clear. Come February the 21st, go out in your numbers, go out and vote early. Cast your vote for the Barbados Labour Party. And here in St. James, make those votes for Edmund Hinkson, Kerry Simmons, and our own Sandra Husbands. Good night, travel safely, God bless, and vote the Barbados Labour Party.